Do you want to learn the tricks that top leaders use to get the most out of themselves and their teams? Well, Naftali Hoff is here to help. Lead to succeed. Picks the brains of top leaders to learn about their challenges, insights, and best practices. Here's Naftali.
Hello, Lead to Succeed Nation. It's Naftali Hoff, and welcome to Lead to Succeed, episode 81. This episode is sponsored by the Impactful Business Leadership Mastermind. The mastermind brings together hungry entrepreneurs and business owners who want to scale their business, share ideas and solutions, grow, and be held accountable, as well as build their networks. Learn more at impactfulcoaching.com/BLM. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Scott Sandland. Scott is the CEO of Cyrano.ai, a company focusing on artificial empathy and strategic linguistics. As a former head of a mental health clinic and longtime technologist, Scott has experience leading purpose-driven organizations. He has been published in numerous peer-reviewed journals, including Psychology Today, Forbes, and Entrepreneur Magazine. And I'll just mention quickly that I had Jason Pfeiffer, editor of Entrepreneur Magazine, as my guest on the previous podcast. Scott has presented his AI work at the United Nations AI for Global Good Conference and is a frequent guest lecturer at various universities. Scott, thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And thank you to Neil Sahota, who is also a previous guest, for making the connection. So I have to dive into something right away, because to me, there's a term in that intro that I read that sounds about as either contradictory or oxymoronic as possible, and that is artificial empathy.
Yep. Yeah.
To me, empathy is real, right? Empathy is, if you're artificial with your empathy, then by definition, it is not legit and it does not serve. So my question, Scott, is what is that? Clearly, I'm not understanding it right. And why is it important? Why are you
It's a perfect question, because Neil, who you just mentioned, is one of the people who sort of branded us with that term. He's an advisor and a great guy. And my co-founder is a sociologist and neurolinguist and hates that term for exactly the reason that you're stating. Because he's like, linguistically, empathy is about sincerity, and artificial sounds like we're faking empathy, which we definitely are not. Or at least I don't think we are. So the idea is artificial intelligence, right? Learning machines that are optimizing for certain outcomes and getting better and better at achieving those outcomes. That's an easy way of thinking of AI. And when I give lectures, I say, how many people could define AI to their grandmother, or like differentiate between AI and just a normal computer? And most people can raise their hand. And then I say, how many people can tell me the difference between empathy and sympathy? And way fewer people can raise their hands.
Interesting.
And so the idea is, sympathy is you tell me I had a bad day. And I say, sincerely, I say, wow, I'm really sorry you had a bad day. That's sympathy. Empathy is me thinking, or even saying, what can I do to make it better? How can I help you? So the idea of empathy is this intrinsic desire for the improvement of the outcomes or experiences of others. And so what I'm looking at Cyrano.ai, or I should say we as a team are looking at, is what we can do with learning machines so that they are intrinsically built to try to help make your mental and emotional states and just experience better. That's it. And there's a lot of complicated ways that we can do that. But at that first level, what we're doing is having an AI that cares if you're happy or not, or cares how it can help you be whatever we're going to call better. And that's what we do.
So tell me, give us a simple example for starters of what that looks like practically. First of all, how does it know? How does the machine know where I'm at, emotionally and otherwise? And what kind of intervention could it provide?
Sure. Yeah. And it starts with that input that you're talking about. And what we measure is words and phrases in context. We're not looking at your pupil dilation or your facial expressions. We're not looking at the sound wave or your words per minute. We're really just looking at the words. And that means we could do that with your social media feed. We could do that in a text message exchange. We could do that on a Zoom call. We can do it anywhere there are words. And what we're looking at is the way you're talking about the stuff you're talking about, whatever it is. So an easy example is our system being able to say, wow, we're listening to a conversation between John Smith and Jane Smith, and their siblings are married or something, because they have the same last name, apparently. And what we're noticing is, John, every time you talk about topic X, you stop talking about solutions and you're only talking about problems. So you're really associated into your problem state and the mental state of being overwhelmed. Versus when you're talking about topic, A, B, or C, you're really outcome oriented. You're really, goal oriented in that space. But in this one, you seem defeated. You seem overwhelmed. You seem some sort of negative constellation. What can we do to help improve that and remind you of your resources, assets, or goals specifically in relation to that topic?
Interesting, because what's happening now, my head is spinning, not in the sense of I'm confused, but like the wheels are turning, so to speak.
Sure.
What I'm trying to understand here is a few things. First of all, there is a freakish element that I'm trying to figure out. Like, is this a Big Brother kind of thing where I'm being stalked by every interaction? What's the platform? What's the interface? What's the framework for this kind of monitoring of my interaction? Number one, and number two, on the back end of it, whatever it is that you're culling, you're pulling together, what is that next phase? Are you actually offering coaching? Are you offering an actual intervention or service? Or are you just highlighting that there's an issue and then it goes up the chain of command, let's say in their company, in their organization, and now they bring in their HR person, their internal coach, their whomever, to go in and say, hey, John is having an issue over here. Why don't you see what he needs?
Sure. So first, the last thing you said, we're definitely not doing on purpose. So I just want to say that first.
Okay.
But going backwards, like you said, the framework, there's a lot of ethics that go into the decisions around that question. And you're right, like that's a gears turning, Big Brother potential, Black Mirror episode scary thing. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why I went to the United Nations AI for Global Good conference, was to seek out all the AI ethicists and talk to them about what we have and what we can and should do with it, and also what we shouldn't do with it, right? So the platforms and the framework. We're in Zoom, where we've had a little over 30,000 users on the platform since the start of COVID-ish. And just to talk about the framework of that tool will analyze your and my conversation, and then it will surface that and say, here's how aligned your priorities were, here's how aligned your communication style was, here's how committed you both were to different topics. And importantly, it's only doing that if both people know the call is being recorded and transcribed. So we, in the same way that any other conversation, you need to say, this call is being recorded. Mm-hmm. We intentionally leaned in there and said, this thing won't do anything unless everybody knows everyone is on the record, because of that fear. The other place where we are today is email. And we went through security reviews for, Google, Microsoft, Apple, Yahoo Mail, all of them. And we went through their ethical and security review system, and, obviously passed that. And so now when you and I send emails back and forth, it's not giving me insights that are sort of like how to weaponize against you, but it's much more about how to optimize the lifetime value of our relationship. So it tells me how to collaborate with you. It tells me how to de-escalate when there's problems together. It does these kinds of things so that it's improving your situation. Like, me as the user, it's improving my situation because I can better understand you. But also, as a user, it would allow me to better impart ethical change work with you. So think of the idea of teen crisis hotline, suicide hotline, veterans affairs hotlines, these kinds of places where they're critical conversations. They're some of the most important conversations happening on earth are with volunteers and strangers. And what if we built a tool that could just help that volunteer, that operator, that well-intentioned person to be 5%, 10%, 50% more effective at connecting with this person in need?
Okay,
And
so I actually want to jump in on that, if I may, Scott.
Please.
Because you answered a question that I was thinking about, which is who wants this? In other words, who would be the person who would be, purchasing this and signing up for your service? Clearly, I can see the value for first responders or those who are providing that kind of intervention, that they're dealing with somebody who's in crisis mode. That part I get, that part is clear. And kudos to you if that's all that it did. I can see how that can, make a huge difference. What I'm trying to do is think about this as bringing it now into the business space, for example. Yeah. So if I want to be better because I just want to, we all have blind spots. We all have areas where we've suffered because we've been misunderstood. And I want to make sure that my communications are strong and that I don't overreact to things. I remember I'm a former head of school. So I remember distinctly numerous times with my email responses, having my assistant head of school read them first before I sent them. Yeah. For feedback, right? Am I being too harsh? Am I missing, whatever it was. Yeah. So you want to be able to get feedback, especially on important issues. Yep. But as an employee, I would imagine, unless a person has a real strong sense of A, wanting to grow, B, recognizing that maybe they've got these blind spots and that they're getting in that person's way, how are we getting this, or how are you doing it, or how are you planning on integrating this kind of technology into a workplace where people may not necessarily welcome this level of analysis of who they are, how they operate, how they communicate?
Sure. So the analysis that we provide only goes to the individual. It's not being sent to their manager or their boss's boss's boss. This is something that they get to own, and it is passively there for your self-improvement. And so it's monitoring this in a way that, in terms of personal identifying information redaction, in terms of security, in terms of all that, we really, started there and made sure that there was a good, like I said, ethical framework on that. But the idea is, well, there's a couple questions in there. I'm trying to figure out which one to answer in a way that's the right process. But who wants to use this? People who are having important conversations. So I think that's a lot of people in sales, and a lot of people in healthcare, and a lot of people who are looking at lifetime value of that customer interaction. So if you think financial planners, if you think real estate agents, if you think physicians, those are the kinds of jobs, headhunting and recruiting. These are the kinds of jobs where understanding this person is a huge advantage. And understanding how you relate to this person is a huge advantage compared to, say, retail sales. So if I say sales, people go, oh, like a call center, boiler room, outbound, and it's not useful there. Where this is useful is when you're building and maintaining relationships. And so that's the direction we're going. And an important difference between us and looking at companies that do a great job like Chorus and Gong that are, both multi-billion-dollar companies. They do amazing stuff, and they're designed to take information and give it to the sales manager. And they own that. Like, that's what they're trying to do. That's what they're selling. And what we're saying is, no, this information belongs to the person having the conversation. The feedback should go to them. I don't want to make your manager's job easier. I want to make you better at what you're doing. And I want you to be able to do that really, really easily. So it takes as small an effort as possible to just keep getting incrementally better at the things that matter.
Got it. So I was going to ask you one question, which I'll read, but I'm going to change the question because there's something behind it that's even more of interest to me, though you could technically answer both if you wish. The original question was, what impact has your training as a hypnotherapist had on your current work? Because to me, there's an obvious connection between understanding the human mind and trying to do it let's call it artificially, so that you can get that much more input, et cetera. But I'd like to think about this from an entrepreneurial standpoint also, because I'm a former educator. So educators, we're kind of like the classic ideal outcome, so to speak, for school, right? School really is about teaching content, about following the rules, about doing things, quote, the right way, having lots of information. And so teachers then teach that, and that's kind of like what they do as a lifetime profession. Entrepreneurship is about bending the rules, not in the illegal sense of the term, but thinking differently, being creative, getting out of the box, right? And learning to leverage what you know and what you do to help other people, right? And to really scale that up. So I'm gonna distill this question a little bit more clearly, perhaps. But the idea is that as a hypnotherapist or as a service provider, like a doctor, like an educator. So for the most part, you think about, right, what do I do? How do I help somebody? And kind of like your primary focus is on providing that service. It's a little bit less about how do I scale it? How do I turn it into something new that the market has never seen before? So I want to be able to help all my listeners who have that entrepreneurial bug, who are interested in, taking what they know and turning it into something that could amplify. Because if you're a psychotherapist, you're helping one person at a time, maybe a small group at a time. Now you're sort of exploding the value because you're taking it to a whole new level. The same way, for example, with my mastermind groups, when I do presentations, when I do things online, all of a sudden I have the opportunity potentially to help lots and lots of people. So I want you to, if you don't mind, Scott, kind of taking us through your through your journey in a way that helps us not only understand where you were coming from and the transition to this, but how it ties into specifically helping people who are entrepreneurially inclined, who can't seem to figure out how to get from knowing lots of stuff to helping lots of people because they've figured out a tool, a resource, et cetera, to scale.
Yeah. So it's a great question. I was the CEO of a mental health clinic when I came up with this idea. And the simple way of thinking of that is, by the time a 15-year-old kid wants to talk to a 30-year-old stranger about the problem is very big. And in many cases, you're getting there too late. And I realized after 20 years of seeing clients that 18, 20 years, that we were getting to too many people too late. And there was all sorts of trauma and off the rails and all these things that could be prevented if we could have these conversations earlier and at scale. And it's not about training more people one at a time. The answer is something to do with technology. And I know that a 15-year-old stressed out kid is much more comfortable talking to their phone and asking Google for help than they are asking the school counselor. And so if I were to say, okay, what if we could build something that was, and I'll just use me as an example, if I built something that was 75% as effective at what I do as I am, and then could give that to everybody at once, what would that be able to do? And that's really where this came from, was the idea of let's build something that can talk to kids when the problems are small. And so there's that side of things. And then getting into the entrepreneurial side, in entrepreneurship, there's this idea of move fast and break things and, make quick mistakes, learn and iterate. And in anything, I'll just call it therapeutic in nature and in artificial intelligence, you should not do that. The unforeseen consequences and the ethical guardrails that do and should exist deter that with good reason. And so in answer to your question, where my experience and training and all of that, impacts my thought process, I very much want to not move fast and break things. I don't want to be, innovative at the expense of ethics. And the lazy, and gigantic example is that, scene in Jurassic Park, where Jeff Goldblum says, you spent so much time thinking if you could, you didn't think if you should. And, we joke around about that sentence a lot because the ethical implications of our technology, fully realized, the implications have a lot of potential for good or bad. And so making sure that we don't move so fast, because you can't get the toothpaste back in the tube. And so we want to make sure that we're thinking things through mindfully, which creates a natural tension with our investors. And that means we've lost some potential investors because we weren't willing to move at the speed of the market. We wanted to really be thoughtful in our approach and roadmap.
So let me drill down on one last detail, because you did end on the entrepreneurial side, which is of great personal interest to me. But again, I think has a lot of value to my listeners and just in general, right? How does a person know? I don't know that there's a single answer to this, but what would be your advice if you're talking to someone who knows a lot about something? Again, we're using doctors and educators as examples, but it could be a lot of different things. And for the most part, they have a practice or they have a job and they're doing that, and they want to find a way to be their own boss, to make a bigger impact, all of that. Number one, how do they know if what they have is marketable? And number two, what would be some advice pieces you would offer, Scott, to help those people take the right kind of action to move forward quickly and purposefully?
So I learned this the hard way. So those are usually the best pieces of advice is people will pay more for painkillers than vitamins. And so if you know a lot, you need to be able to think of it entrepreneurially. You need to think of the value of the problem, not of the solution, because people care about solving their problem, not how cool you are. And I wasted a lot of time being very proud of myself and my team for inventing something new and special and patting ourselves on the back and saying, boy, aren't we clever. And it wasn't until we were really pointing this at problems, not solutions looking for problems, that we could get some traction. And
so drill down on that, please, for a moment, because I don't think everybody necessarily has clarity. At least if this conversation was happening 2-3 years ago, before I did my own, let's call it marketing work and things like that, to really understand problem solution. So give an example, please, of what it would look like to talk solution first as opposed to talk problem first.
Yeah. And again, to use a metaphor, you got to know who the bad guy is in the movie for you to care about the good guy in the movie. And so we have to think about, like I said, the cost of the problem. And usually that should get translated into dollars or some sort of major pain point. Like the one for Cyrano, a big piece of it is suicide, and especially suicide of people under the age of 24, because it's the second leading cause of death for people under 24 in America is suicide. And it's a massive problem. And so when I said, hey, I want to help people, people are like, oh, that's good. I want to help people too. A lot of us want to help people. There's a lot of good, caring people in the world. I'm glad you're on the team with us, but I don't care, But as soon as we could say, this tool can reduce teen suicide by X, meaning we can save X number of lives per year. As soon as you can quantify the problem and quantify what you can do about it, now people will lean forward, because just saying, hey, I can do new things. I can teach this class online. I can, whatever it is. No one cares. That's a vitamin. That's better than it was before, but I'm not gonna, stop scrolling to read what that says. But as soon as you can hit them with a problem that relates to them in some way, now they're interested. People care about their problems first. And if you can reduce or remove one of their problems, they will pay with their attention. And then if you can show them that that's a business, then they will pay with their money. And so you need to get them to pay with attention before you get them to pay with their money. And a lot of people aren't trying to get them to pay attention. They're just saying, look, I'm awesome, you should invest. But they don't care yet, so they won't.
Right. So it's kind of interesting, because to sort of translate this even further, and that was a great example, again, as an educator, you might say, I'm just here to teach, right? As a doctor, I'm just here to heal or whatever. But when you bring problems to people's attention, and on top of it, when you become aware, when you're looking around, right, one of the greatest opportunities for entrepreneurship is just being having your eyes wide open, getting out into the world, seeing what people need. And then when you identify how to address that, then like you said, you can say, this is an issue. I see it all the time. When I talk about my mastermind group specifically for school leaders, because I got business, I've got school leaders, I got different groups. So I tell them, like I'm talking to busy school leaders who are overwhelmed. The pandemic has run roughshod right all over their work. They're understaffed, right? We need to create a support group where we can problem solve, where we can share ideas, where we can help each other out, because we're super isolated. We might be surrounded by hundreds or thousands of kids every day and adults and whatever, but who really gets what you do in the school leadership head position? The answer is almost nobody. Right. And who could you be vulnerable to? So now all of a sudden we're talking in terms of problems, and here's a solution. So that's relevant to almost anything that if we want people to respond, and that's why I'm encouraging people who are listening, if they have something that they think they could bring to market as a solution that'll help other people, that would be a great starting point, because ultimately it's going to it'll get people's attention faster. Yes.
Another example, if I may,
Sure.
that we found was in real estate sales. We said real estate's a perfect example of what we can do work in. We can give you all this insight to be a better real estate agent. And no one wanted to be a better real estate agent. Very few people want to be better at what they do. They just want better results. And so as soon as we switched from, hey, we can make you a more effective communicator in real estate, as soon as we switched that to, and everyone's like, oh, the market's great, I don't need anything. As soon as we switched it to, we can help you convert more listings. We can get you more listings because that's where the competition is. That's your pain point. That's your problem. You're having a first meeting and you're not getting them, or you're not even getting that meeting. That's where we're targeting. That's what we do. And that's when the phone rang.
Nice. Okay. So one last question in this segment. And this is one I try to ask often because, frankly, as you talked about before, the issue of failure is real, right? We don't grow if we don't fail. So I'm curious to know, Scott, what failure, or maybe apparent failure, did you experience at some point, and how did you grow from it?
Yeah. So it wasn't an individual failure, but it was definitely a shortcoming on my part that I learned a lot from. And that was, it was in sports. So I was a water polo player in high school and college. And in high school, I was very good. I was the MVP and team captain, all these, accolades, which is great. And that is exactly enough to make me average in college. And I was on a good college team, and we were competitive, and we went to NC2A championship stuff and all that. And I was probably exactly middle on the depth chart. Like I was right there. And that was an uncomfortable place for me. I wasn't used to being there because in high school I was, high up. And so I felt myself forcing things. And I felt myself putting undue pressure on myself to be the best on the team, even though the team didn't need me to be that. And so there was a lot of lessons that I learned the hard way about being in the rhythm of what the team needed me to be, rather than what my ego wanted me to be.
Interesting.
And so finding a way to be of service to a larger team, rather than being, the Kobe Bryant of the team. I definitely wasn't the Kobe Bryant of my college team. And no one who played with me in college would be confused about that fact.
Interesting.
But so learning that and finding moments where I'm forcing things or trying to be too much instead of being in rhythm and being in flow, because when and I think this is true for most people, when I'm in my rhythm, when I'm doing the right amount of stuff, things feel much easier than when I'm trying to do too much or trying to be the wrong thing. And you can feel that forced feeling. And so for me, that's a big lesson that I reflect on frequently.
This isn't about me, but at the same time, I hear a lot of what you're talking about in my own experience. I have a chapter in my book, which is about shifting the mindset from me to we.
Yeah.
Because as a leader, you're no longer, like, for example, we talked about sales previously. So if I was a great salesperson and I was killing it, and then I got promoted to sales manager, right? So now my responsibilities shift. I'm no longer supposed to necessarily be the primary driver of sales as much to teach others, motivate them, set goals, all of that.
Facilitate, et cetera.
Now our success is the we. Right. And as leader, also, my role changes, using education as an example. Before I was an educator. So I was in the classroom, one-to-one or one-to-many with my students. Now my job is to facilitate great teaching and great learning in the building. So it's less about what I know and my own ability to walk in a classroom and excite and engage, and more about how do I create a framework where my teachers can be doing that so that they could be successful with their students.
Yeah.
So I think it really all speaks to the same point of understanding that as we adjust in life, we have to be thinking continually about, do I need to still be the person I was? Is there anything where I need to be reflecting or acting differently? And oftentimes that's where the true growth happens.
Yeah.
So I love it. That was like a great way to end that segment. And now we're going to move into rapid fire. So again, the answer is short and sweet. We'll have a few of them, and then we'll go from there. So the first one is, if you could plaster a message on a massive billboard, what would it say?
I don't know the exact wording, but it would be something like, we're all in this together. Okay. Something that gets the people to realize, we've got too many tribes. We've got too many teams fighting. And the more we could just say, we're all in this together, something like that.
Bringing everyone together is critical. What are you not very good at?
Math. I am terrible at math. And
I'm probably not much better. And then the last one, what is a book that you most often gift or recommend?
More recently, it's probably a parenting book because my son's 5. But in general, I would say it's a book, Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. That's probably the book I've given as a gift more than any other book.
Very interesting. Okay, so Scott, you've shared a lot. Clearly, you've had a lot of success and have been in a lot of different places, let's say, along your career journey. Let Lead to Succeed Nation know how they could reach out to you, how they can connect with you, learn more about your work, and hopefully continue to follow you as you bring this exciting product further into market.
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn is the best place. And it's just, LinkedIn and then my name, Scott Sandland. And I'd love to connect to people there, or our website, Cyrano.ai. Happy to talk to people there. We have free trials on our site and all that stuff. We want people to be comfortable with what we're doing.
Awesome. Okay. So we're going to link that up in the show notes. And I would be remiss, Scott, if I didn't squeeze out one final life lesson from you to wrap up our conversation.
The last life lesson is Patton Oswalt gave advice that his wife had given him before she passed away, which was something to the effect of, this is all such chaos and there's so much entropy in this life and world. We just have to be kind to each other. And regardless of faith or religion or race or country of origin or whatever it is, there's so much chaos in each person's life and so much potential for suffering in each person's life that we just need to be kinder to each other. And that's
Love it. Okay. Yeah, no, kindness is great. And we're recording this on a Friday. So as a Sabbath observer, it's a great reminder for me as we're going to sit around the table and, we power down. So we interact quite a bit face to face. It's quite a change from the week. Just think in our family, but of course in our communities, and as we think more globally, to increase kindness and to think differently about people. We're so inundated, whether it's the media or other things, to not necessarily think in those terms. And I love the way we ended this. So thank you, Scott. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to interacting with you and getting to know you better in the future. And again, on behalf of everyone here at Lead to Succeed, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode and for investing in yourself so that you can lead to succeed. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your feedback gives the show more social proof and encourages more folks to listen.